Welcome back, everybody, to the population stage. My name is Damien Francis. I'm the head of event content at Mumbrella. This afternoon's sessions are going to be fantastic, so I'll just encourage you all to use the hashtag M360Asia. I think you'll be finding there's some great slides and great insights coming up, so it'd be great to get that trending again like it was yesterday. I believe it was the second highest trending hashtag in Singapore on Twitter. So this next session, our speakers will be discussing advertising in 2030, the megatrends that will shape the industry's future. I'd like to now introduce the moderator for this session, Vikas Gulati, the APAC Managing Director at Ad Colony, who will be our session moderator. He has nearly 20 years of experience in the industry, working across digital media, mobile and ad tech, serving brands such as P&G, LVMH, ESPN, LG, and many more. Please welcome Vikas.
Thank you, Damien. Can you all hear me? You know, we're going to be talking about 2030, and Damien just introduced me as 20 years of experience. I don't want you to get wrong impressions about my age. I'm still learning. OK. How are we doing after lunch, by the way? All good? Very excited? Ready? Yeah? Thank you, Mumbrella, for inviting us here. I'm absolutely delighted. It's a fantastic turnout, fantastic crowd. I was here yesterday as well, some amazing sessions. I think we've got an exciting session ahead. We're talking about advertising in 2030, some of the mega trends that are going to be shaping the future of advertising, right? And who better than to talk about it than Google and Essence. Google, we all know. Essence is the new age digital agency. So let me just kind of introduce the panelists. I would like to now invite Kyoko Matsushita. Yeah. Kyoko is the MD APAC for Essence. Welcome on stage, Kyoko. You know, they've been partnered with Google for almost now a decade plus. They've been managing the Google Media business. And they will be sharing insights. Kyoko will be sharing insights about how they've been managing this. I would also want to invite Grace Liao. She's the APAC head for media. I just want to clarify, she's actually on the consumer marketing side of Google. She's not the ad tech side. She is responsible for managing all the consumer products of Google for APAC, right? So great to have you on board. We'll start directly with the sessions.
Great.
Now, yeah.
Put them in here.
OK, why don't we just do a quick introduction about your roles first, a very quick, like 5-10 seconds introduction, and maybe your opening thoughts to kick off the session. And then we'll dive into the mega trends.
Sure. So I'm Grace. I'm pretty new to Google, slightly over a year. And I'm the head of media at Google, which basically means any kind of media that Google runs in APAC, it has come by sort of my team's desk. And we try to think about, I mean, we're quite separate to sort of like the Google products team and all that. So we try to think about media in its applications to, how consumers are really consuming media, how they're interacting with media. So that's always top of mind for us. And how do we drive innovation as Google, right? I mean, I think a lot of marketers also look at us as sort of the front leader. And we always like to take risks because it's very encouraging within our company. So that's kind of what my role at Google is. And in terms of the topic today, I mean, if you think about 2030, it sounds like a scary number, 2030. But really, if we think about it, as I was preparing for this panel, it's really only about less than 15 years away, right? Which is kind of scary. So if you had a 1-year-old son, your son would be a teenager. And so with those lens, I think that's kind of how I'm going to frame a lot of kind of what we say. And if we look back 15 years and how far we've been, I think there's certainly advancements. And I think if you look generationally, the advancements, I guess, for people like my parents, it's much more leapfrog than somebody necessarily like for me, as an example. So I think in those same lens, I think as we approach this panel, as you guys think about your questions, I think it's good for us to kind of share.
Great. My name is Kyoko Matsushita. I run Essence in APAC. I've been with Essence for 3 years and 3 months. Not that long, but lots have happened in the last 3 years and 3 months. Essence is a global integrated media agency. We started fully digital, but we've expanded into offline media as well. And in some markets, we're still expanding in other markets. In APAC, as far as APAC is concerned, we started in Singapore, but we then opened office in Tokyo, Sydney, Delhi, now Mumbai and Bangalore in India, and also right now in Seoul and also Indonesia. So expansion has been exponential. We're also learning along the way about the markets and also hiring aggressively the senior leadership and talents who know the markets. I've worked and started in a media agency and also creative agency. Also wanted to know what clients do, so went to the client side. Learned a lot about products. And also a lot of strategies, like what we don't know as an agency. I learned a lot during the time I was at Sony Electronic Arts and also a gaming company called Gree. So after doing all that, key thing for me was really how do we solve marketing problems, marketing challenges, whether it's on the product or client side or on the agency side. The reason why I had the opportunity to join Essence was really the brief was very clear to me when I interviewed for the role. Please scale APAC. And that was it. It's great, I'll do it, So that was 3.5 years ago for me.
Thank you. That was a great introduction. So let's dive right into it. So Grace, you talked about, 15 years is not that far out. We've got a generation of youngsters, millennials today, who are coming with, are exposed to so much of technology. We've got so much of gadgets. We're talking about AI, machine learning. We've got VR, ARs. What are the biggest trends that you are excited about that you think are going to be shaping the future of advertising?
I think definitely AI is sort of on the tip of everyone's tongue right now. And I believe we're still in the infancy of AI. I live in Tokyo now, and when you go in certain shops, you'll see that little robot that is in front of every store to kind of greet you, and you can actually ask them questions, but it's a blunt instrument right now. So it's not super sophisticated. You have to ask them questions a certain way, and then they respond to you a certain way. And I think the nirvana for us, hopefully in 15 years, and maybe in 5, we could see that, is interaction with AI in a human way.
Right.
Right? I mean,
talking about all the personal assistants and voice and the use of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I look at my nieces and my nephews, and they're still pretty young, like 3, 4 years old. I put them on my lap, and I have my laptop open, and guess what? The first thing they do is they swipe. Yeah. I'm sorry, I have an old computer that doesn't swipe, But that's instinctively what they do, right? And my sister uses television as a blunt instrument. She's like, okay, babysitting time. Go in front of TV. I'm going to turn on a children's program, and you're going to be absorbed by this, right? But how wonderful would it be if this television program or this television can actually interact with the children and teach them beyond just sort of like a one-way type of approach, like a push approach, right? How do we also do this push and pull? And I think the promise of AI is going to get us there. I feel like the hardware industry has tried to sort of respond to that by, 2 years ago, the hot topic was 3D TVs. Where are these 3D TVs now? I mean, it's not really taken off on consumer, and I think primarily because that interaction has not paid off consumers.
Right. Kyoko?
So I have 2 kids. My 9-year-old is similar to your niece and nephew. So, obviously, we're renovating an apartment, so I have to work in front of them. And my daughter looks at me and goes, Mom, what are you doing? And I'm searching stuff, like buying things for you. And then she goes, why don't you ask Siri? Why are you searching, like yourself? Right. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's true. So in 2030, definitely probably search is going to be done differently because my daughter doesn't think searching is putting in keywords anymore. She's talking. So, she's the one in 15 years. She's 9, so, she's going to be 24, 25. That's the generation we're talking about. So this was a great topic, looking at my daughter. And, she doesn't think about searching on a laptop. She doesn't use a laptop. So that's just like an everyday environment thing. But when I thought about it, advertising will be influenced, or we would need to think about advertising very differently based on what's happening in the economy at the macro level. So in 15 years, the cities that we think are the big cities probably won't be the big cities anymore. There'll be emerging cities in China or India, right, that we need to really revisit, look at what kind of people are there. That's like one thing. But also people, as I think all of us, right, we live in one place, but we don't necessarily shop in one place, and we use online to do different things. That's another thing. There are going to be a lot of older people, generation, population in 15 years' time. And I was reading that outside of Africa, the senior generation is going to be huge. So the people that we're advertising to and targeting are going to be using technology differently from the young ones, like my daughter in 15 years. So how are we going to target these people and make sure that messages resonate to these people? And at the end, of course, all these digital technologies are going to continue to be developed, like a company like Google, but many other tech companies. And the way we trade and the kind of people who are going to be consuming and the services or buying products, it's all going to change. But it's going to all come together. We're going to have more data than what we have today. So who's going to take the lead in actually bringing this data together, but still make it simple? So if you think about all these things, the future of advertising, it's hard to predict, but you need to consider all of these things, and you need to continue to be receptive, but also read ahead of the game of what's coming next in thinking about advertising.
Right. Like, a lot of the stuff that talked about, like with AI and search and how the TV is going to happen. And I'm just trying to understand the implications on some of the legacy platforms. Do you think, like, at one end, we still have a pretty large spending that happens on print, on TV? Do you think there are implications on those media to change? What does the future look like for the legacy media, the traditional media, in that sense?
I mean, I think some form of that media will exist, but obviously it's evolution of those media types. And I think we also need to think about the time continuum. Right. So something that used to happen and that takes 3 to 5 years to happen, today it may only take 1 to 3 years. So the advancement and the evolution of products, of media, and frankly, the thing that has disrupted all this is the consumer interaction. Right? Advertising, TVs, TV media, whatever, it used to be dictated by the cable networks, right? So if they tell you this is the time you're going to watch this program, you'll be sure you'll be sitting in front of that and watching that program, right? So the one thing that creates is, of course, the family gets together and everyone sits around the TV and watches the TV together. But today, it's not that way, right? It's on demand. I'm going to watch this when I watch this. And so instead of maybe 2 to 3 TV sets, you have like 1 TV in each room. And the concept of this family viewing time has changed. Right? So the implications for consumers, for advertisers, have also changed. And for the cable networks, definitely, how do they control this? Right? How do they control this from piracy? How do they control this from maintaining the GRPs that they used to maintain and reporting out on that? People are no longer just watching it on TV. They're watching it on their mobile device, their tablets. I mean, you name it, right? Things could be watched from Netflix, from Amazon Prime. I mean, it's endless, right? And I can only imagine much more formats, forms, content, and how niche are these content going to be? I think that's the other thing, right? So you're going from mass to niche to can you eventually pick your own story? And you, the consumer, or we, the consumers, are now the producers of our own content.
And they choose the story that they want to watch or they want to create.
Or they want to create, exactly. I mean, I have a very bad habit, which is when I read, I always go to the end of the book to take a peek and go, I don't like this ending, I'm going to read this book. I know, it's a terrible habit. Everyone tells me that. I can't sort of like extract myself from that. But similarly, right, how many times have I watched a movie, especially, like the Chinese kung fu movies, and you watch to the end, it's like, everybody's dead. I'm like, okay, so I just spent 2 hours of my life watching a movie that everyone is dead. I'd rather have known that before I start watching. So I think this would be the new normal. And I think consumers probably are unaware, but they are probably already doing that and participating in that. And so for advertisers, the challenge is now, the lines between advertising and content are definitely blurring.
Right.
But how do we still be transparent to consumers to say, like, you're watching actually something that we've created for you? And be transparent about that so they don't feel like they're getting gypped or something.
So Kyoko, you manage the Google business, right? Like Google account.
My team.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
They are your client.
Yes.
So what part of what Grace is talking about, how are you kind of implementing that, or how are you kind of moving the Google business, for example, are you saying TV is dead? Like, are you actually navigating the Google business and trying to kind of go forward with that plan? How does that play out?
Obviously people are shifting a lot the way in which they consume, just information, entertainment, content, everything more towards digital. I mean, that's for sure. But when you talk about APAC, for example, it's so different that you can't just say TV is dead in this market or all markets. That's not the case. It's still effective in raising awareness in certain markets. And also, as Grace said, all depends on the actual product and services and content as well. Because I have another client who's launching, for example, in a market like Japan, where OTT service is still at infancy stage. Right? And they need to build that awareness. And TV is still mass media to a certain extent to build awareness in that market. So for that matter, I'm not saying don't do TV. It's actually, there is a role for TV. But at the end of the day, TV has to impact the conversion, right? And subscription for that kind of a business.
Right.
So as an agency, we have a role to play to advise the client. And how do we actually measure that impact through the line, right? So that's the kind of thing that we, of course, work with Google, but consistently across different clients. So it's extremely important, the return of investment. I mean, for marketers, and I think that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about, is they really need to prove the value of marketing. How hard is every dollar working, right, as an investment for that. So measurement is the key there. And how is TV really impacting? If it can be proven in certain markets, that's fine. But the shift to digital is happening, and we should really be looking at measuring how digital impacts that conversion.
I would also like to add, the cornerstone and the foundation which Essence is built on is data, right? And I think today we're still struggling to bring the data sets of digital and offline, whether it's TV or print or whatever, together, and they've done a fairly good job of kind of closing that gap. So as we continue to close that gap with their help, it actually makes us smarter marketers, right? Because we know that there's impact on both ends.
Right.
And we know that actually TV and digital are the most closely related in terms of impacting each other positively. So that's the one key driver, using data as a currency to really help us understand the interplay between all these channels.
Right, got it. Cool. I want to just switch gears a little bit. One of the trends that we haven't talked about right now is like social media, right? For the last decade, social media would be one of the mega trends, right? Obviously, there is Facebook, there's WhatsApp, there's YouTube, Instagram, and like it's different forms, and consumers are always evolving. Their habits are changing. Now, social is obviously changing the way consumers have kind of connecting with each other and how they're talking to each other. But it's also fundamentally changing how brands are also talking to consumers today, right? How advertisers are reaching out to you. What do you see if you cut back into, say, 2030, how do you see that space evolving? Is social media will continue to be the way it is today, or is it going to be like very, very different? What are the trends that you see?
I see social media sort of in a brand agnostic way, because I think if we talk about Facebook as an example, which a lot of people, when you say social media, they immediately think, oh, Facebook, right? But when you go out there and you do focus groups and you talk to consumers and all that, the younger generation, which is this generation that we're talking about, they've actually migrated away from Facebook and onto Instagram, onto Snapchat, onto even Twitter. Shockingly, they've kind of but fundamentally, I think what social enables is a way to speak back to fill in the blanks, right? To marketers, as an example. There were several instances when social media first came on that you had marketers who were not responsive to consumers in their feedback, whether it is, you have a phone service and it's spotty and you've complained and called customer service 20,000 times, but the second you send out a tweet that says, blah, blah, blah sucks, do something, and you have 50,000 retweets, it's much more powerful than your single phone call, than your one letter.
Right.
And change starts to happen. And so the power equation, I think, is what social media enables for all of us, right? You've leveled the playing field.
Right.
So people can interact and say, this is great, this is bad, whatever, right? So to me, the trend is the continuation of not allowing, but of engaging consumers in a much more meaningful way and creating products that are actually relevant to them.
Right.
Makes their life convenient, easy, fill in the blank.
Yeah, I agree about being relevant to consumers, and I think it has become a bit of a broadcasting tool for a lot of clients or brands, and even some individuals, right? But people also have ways to block it. Eventually, there will be some technology built so that they don't have to actually deal with certain type of advertising and all that, and it's already there. But the point is that we got whatever it is, a piece of communication, got to be relevant and respectful to the audiences. Whether it's a social platform or different digital channels, different medium, we got to make sure that it's so easy. The consumers have the upper hand of blocking, skipping, ads. And it will be more so, in 15 years. They're not going to be looking at advertising in a passive way at all, right? Like you said, it's all experience and stories. So if it's not relevant, it's a commercial suicide.
In a way, you said basics would still be relevant. It's the fundamentals of communication, making sure you're.
But it's a commercial suicide. You're wasting a lot of money.
Whether it's going to be Facebook, or it's going to be different form, or it's going to be WhatsApp, or whatever, it might change. But advertising in its core form stays the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think advertising truly has to evolve. I think advertising needs to be less of a mass reach product. It needs to be much more tailored to the individual lifestyle of families. And certainly if you group people together, there's enough of a scaled mass to do it that way. But you have to pay attention to what people are paying attention to. And you have to figure out how you can help solve problems for them or be relevant in their lives. Because I think in 2030, certainly there will be far more automation than we've ever seen now.
Right.
Right.
It's interesting that you're talking about disrupting the experience and like pushing the message, broadcasting. I'm hearing that word again and again. Do you see a world where marketing and advertising is going to become less disruptive, less pushy in a way, where consumers' consent is taken into account? If consumers chooses to engage, they opt in for advertising. Do you think we're heading towards a world in 2030 where it's more driven by opt-ins? I
think certainly content owners are trying to be more respectful of that. And I think about remember those annoying pop-up ads that showed up every time you load a page on the desktop?
Right.
And after like 2 years, it all went away because consumers were like all up in arms, like I'm not going to put up with this, right? Yeah. And so I think that was very much a response from
It's kind of funny, like when I see some of the videos, right, like, and I'm not saying it's pretty much all across, those have those timers coming along, right?
Yeah.
I'll let you skip the ad, but plus watch at least 10 seconds.
Right.
5 seconds.
Exactly. So this respectfulness and this interchangeability, like this sort of like interdependency now exists. However, there's also this very real threat that content owners have to monetize their content.
Right.
And if consumers continue skipping and whatever, right, then this freeness of the content could very well go away. And it's a real threat to publishers, to content owners. And so I think there's a lot more development that needs to happen. There will certainly be more paywalls. So consumers have to get used to paying for certain things.
You call for value exchange, like there's a certain amount of either you pay for it or you're paying.
Right, you have to consume, like somebody has to pay for this stuff, right?
And I think just to add, agencies, agency side, and will be tested on making sure that we're measuring it accurately, you know, the impact. And if ads are being blocked or skipped, eventually, you know, it'll be very transparent, and we'll see that. And how do we make sure that every dollar is working hard to reach the audiences we should be reaching?
Right.
You know,
Right.
not the mass. It's not going to be the mass. It's the really, we have to spearhead and actually reach those audiences. So again, measurement, data, but you know, you have to put the right measurement design and track those data and derive insights. I mean, this is going to be a massive, you know, challenges of agencies, you know, in some markets where we can't actually measure things, but we need to take that step forward with publishers and actually, you know, develop the ways in which we can actually measure things consistently.
Right.
You know, so there are a lot of challenges ahead in this space, in this industry.
Yep, absolutely, I agree. I do want to touch upon video as well. Like, video is one of the biggest trends that we see. More and more consumption of video content is happening on mobile devices. A lot more time is getting spent on that. You know, we are seeing different kind of services getting launched. There's live streaming services. There's obviously Netflix. There's Amazon Prime, various OTT players coming in. We're also seeing the other end of the spectrum, which is like you've got all this talk on virtual reality. There are new games coming in where we're talking about people, you know, getting that experience of the game, like you're playing inside the game itself. Yeah. There's augmented reality, right? There's like a lot of this stuff which is really coming into action now. Still in fancy, but it's happening. But then you have the other end of the brand communication in the advertising world, which is still centered around the 30-second TV spot, right? Like, that's what brands produce today. Just wanted to get your views about how do you get the brands to bridge this gap? How do you get them to navigate this space from a 30-second TVC to creating more experiential stuff, which is what looks like to be the new world order?
I go? When I think about that, I mean, we work in a very fast-paced digital industry, but when I take some steps back and look at my family, or, you know, there are different age groups of people, right? Like, my grandparents are not here anymore, but like my parents, right? They love watching, you know, certain type of content on TV. And when they're watching TV, they're of course advertising. And if that advertising resonates to them, if it has some meaningful, you know, messages, they respond to it, you know. And that's the generation today. But, you know, I'll be probably in that space, not that, you know, so yet old, but, you know, in 15 years, you know, would I be watching TV or would I be watching everything on I don't know, mobile devices? Probably might be combining both, but it all depends on the kind of content that's also coming through TV, right? So TV 30 seconds, you know, to answer your question, whether it's 30 or 15, I mean, if there's content on TV that is meaningful and it's relevant for me, I'll probably end up watching it. But if it's nothing to do with me and if it doesn't resonate and it doesn't matter to me, I'll probably turn it off, right? So it's not actually the TV as a media itself, but what's being broadcasted on TV is going to be the challenge of a lot of the TV networks in the future. That's for sure. But generally, I mean, again, as I said, what is the role of TV? I mean, it used to be all about awareness.
Right.
You know, when you all work in marketing, probably it's, you know, at some point it's the upper funnel and then it goes down all the way to the conversion. But awareness doesn't necessarily come anymore from TV. And definitely in 15 years, I think that at least the generations like my daughter, they're not going to be doing that. They're going to be more, you know, spending all the time on digital gadgets, you know, of new things and robots. So I think for me, the role of TV is going to fundamentally change. Yeah.
Right. Grace?
I don't watch TV. No, I mean, I seriously don't watch real-time TV.
Does Google not produce any more TV scenes?
Sadly, we actually do. We actually do believe that television has its role.
Right.
But we almost also want to think about it from a very screen agnostic standpoint. So one of the very cool things that we did, and it's certainly not 2030, but I feel like in 2030, maybe this type of experience will be much easier to execute and be more available to advertisers. So we did a really cool execution where we were able to understand what content was coming up, and then do, you know, a sort of like a sliver of a spot that actually is related to the content that is coming, or like that just happened.
Right.
So it interacted with the consumers from the standpoint of they're like, oh, it's like a teaser and it's kind of fun. And it's not just sort of like, here, like just give me all your messaging and that was it. We wanted to bring relevancy to that. But it was incredibly hard to execute because, you know, the studios, the cable network, they like to keep their content right close to their chest. So it was incredible negotiation done by the Essence team to actually unveil that and show that. And, you know, my hope is that in 2030, you know, consumers can actually line up some of the commercials that they want to watch. What content of commercials that you like to watch? I mean, and you know, it's not an infomercial, it's still a commercial, and so it's these like snippets or whatever, but it's something that's relevant to you. Because today, you don't get to choose what you want to watch or what you don't want to watch in terms of, it just shows up, right? But maybe in 2013, that could be an evolution of how that interaction happens. And then AR and, you know, and all that, I mean, it's cool. And every time, I always have the same reaction, like when I, you know, put on glass or whatever, or take out a postcard and whatever, I'm like, oh my God, it's so cool, right? But the scaled application of it, I haven't really seen that promise kind of come through. And who wants to walk around with this, like, goggles, right? And it's so sort of like, I have problems with just wearing my glasses and I sometimes run into things, so that's with me.
Selling well?
Oh, I mean, I think we're trying to make it accessible.
Right.
Right? And I think it has to evolve to the point that it is seamless. You don't have to buy another thing.
Right.
Right? And it just should just work with whatever you have.
Whatever you have.
Yeah.
So it has to change.
Yep.
Interesting you made a point about consumers' choice. You know, it's consumers who are going to make a conscious choice about what they want to consume, what they want to watch.
Yep.
They'll probably even line up. But they're already leaving a lot of data today, right? They're giving you a lot of signals in how they consume content, what devices they're consuming on. And there is like terabytes of data.
Yeah.
You know, every tech platform today is holding that knowledge.
Right.
Right? And that data obviously means that it should automatically translate into a certain level of personalization, right? Like what you kind of give to consumers in terms of messaging. I think the question I really have is, you think about the role of the marketer in this data world. How do you see, like, first of all, do you think marketing is going to get, a lot of it is going to get automated, it's going to get a lot more personalized, and what does it mean for the role of a marketer going forward? Even for agencies, like, what does the agencies look like in future if data is going to be the driving force of all marketing communications?
I mean, data and, combination of data and technology will enable, kind of a semi-automation, for example, especially around like performance media, right?
Right.
Like right now, my team works sometimes on the weekends to optimize campaigns because there are content that's so important for the weekend, sports, for example. And they work 8 hours to make sure and watching, when is the great time to actually, bid and all that kind of things. Those will be automated. I mean, it's already semi-automated, but in 15 years, we're talking about machine, doing that. So that people can spend their time on things that matter, which is still about thinking ahead. What is happening, again, what's happening at the macro level to the economy? What's going to happen to the people? How the behavior is going to change? That thinking would be human. It needs to be human, engaging with CMOs and the senior marketers, right? So automation will happen to certain areas of things, so definitely in the space of digital, and it's already happening. It will probably accelerate even more so because a lot of tools and products are being developed. Essence also we have several proprietary tools to enable us and enable my team to focus on things that are important, spending time with the clients and understanding the marketing challenges. So data, is part of that story. But the human side will definitely, and needs to remain in communicating with the clients on really understanding and really looking at what we continue to need to do. Because in the space right now in advertising, when we're especially in digital, launching is not the end of it. Remember, it used to be, well, I remember because I used to also do offline, but when you get TV out, that's it, you're done. My campaign's done, and you celebrate with agencies, right. And both client and agencies that I did it. But now, you get it out, and everything starts there. You're just at the starting line when you launch the campaign. You look at the data every day, you look at the trend every day, and then really speak to the client and decide together what you're going to do next. Where you're going to shift the money and reinvest the money. You focus on things that's working, and you cut the spends on certain things. So engagement with client or business partners will remain, and that will be the human side. And then a lot of things that can be automated are already being semi-automated today and in advance.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in marketing because we love how that it is both art and science. And I think before it used to be much more art.
Right.
And now it's much more science, right? Because we have the opportunity to collect all this data set and make sense of it. The tricky part comes when you have the different laws that regulate what you can use that data for. And so I think this has all presented a very challenging environment for marketers. I mean, if you look at the lifespan for CMOs, I think recently it's, 18 months?
Yeah,
for
it's come
CMO?
down a lot, like
yeah, and
2 years, less than 2 years.
Right, because it's an extremely challenging environment. CMOs today are not just expert marketers. I have an MBA in X, Y, and Z, and I've spent this much time in CPG, and so I get the checkbox, right? There's so much more that you need to be involved in. If you have a website and it's global, what are the laws in each country? I mean, you have so much more of a challenge. So while your data is there, I think it's still used in a super aggregate form that is convenient, but would have been nice if you can actually do more stuff, right? But I think also consumers are cautious about how this data is being used. I mean, I come from the US, and recently, I'm sure you guys have read about it, there's this huge Experian, which is the credit bureau. They have all information on pretty much all on all Americans, and there was a data breach. So everyone's data is out there.
Right.
Right. So consumers, I mean, for me personally, I'm just like, okay, I didn't really have a choice because you were collecting my data to determine if I was my creditworthiness. Now that it has been breached, all I'm offered is credit monitoring service. I mean, what is that going to do for me, credit monitoring service, if I don't have time to even read my work emails? I mean, am I really going to be looking at this? So I think, using data as a currency, having these laws in place are great, but if we are to actually tap into data in a very meaningful way, there has to be much better assurances for consumers on how we're actually going to treat these data respectfully. How do they opt out of it? Because at some point, people are going to be like, I'm happy to pay for this.
Right.
Therefore, you don't use any of my information for anything else. Right? So how do we actually enable that today? Like today, we can't really enable that.
That's a good question. Yeah, consumers might make a choice of saying, I don't want to be,
That's a consumer side, but marketing side continues to, and it's not starting today. It's been like that for some time, and I think it will be in the future, is more and more data will be available, but we still haven't figured out how to connect those, and right? I mean,
or trust them, right?
Trust them. Which ones can we trust? I mean, that's
we talked about things like machine learning, artificial intelligence. If a lot of that data starts to converge together, and the machine learning does come into play, a lot of the part, which is just the science part of it, can be automated, but the art, the ideas.
Yeah, and the false positive, right? A machine may not necessarily be able to catch false positives. So, there's an example in my past life, right? I used to work on craft, and we were very sensitive about brand safety. So we didn't want any ads to appear next to violence, porn, gambling, blah, 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 whatever. And we had a huge uptick one time when we were running a campaign, and it was like huge uptick on violence. And we were like, oh my God, where are we running? And it turns out that we were running next to articles that were giving reviews on knives. It's a culinary site that was giving reviews on buy this knife, this is how you sharpen this knife. But the machine interpreted that as violence because it's knives. So these are the false positives that could happen, that the machine is simply not there.
Right.
Pick it up because it doesn't understand context. And then when you make it into different languages, the double byte languages, which is Chinese, Arabic, and all that, where you not only have to look at the surrounding, you have to look at the front and the back to understand the context, it's even more difficult.
Right.
So, I think machine learning certainly is a promise, and it may pay off then, but we have to appreciate human complexity.
Right.
As much as the machine can evolve, so too are we.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll be 15 years older.
I know. Maybe there'll be an elixir of some kind in 15 years.
We're running short of time. I do want to give like 5 minutes to the audience to ask
Sure.
questions as well, but I would have one question for you. We briefly touched upon it. What's keeping the agency heads up at night and what's keeping CMOs up at night? Like, what's the biggest challenge that you guys are facing in your businesses today?
Do you want to go first?
What's keeping me at night? You said
Yeah,
CEO.
yeah, absolutely. What's keeping you at night?
Well, I'll talk from where I stand as an Essence CEO. We're scaling really fast, and we are having the opportunity to work with great clients, starting with Google and other clients. And in my role, obviously, I really want to understand the burning pain point of the CMOs. I want to be close to what are their challenges, right? But as I grow my organization, I sometimes don't have the opportunity to spend as much time right now. And it's so important in my role to continue to engage, for example, spending time with Grace, but her colleagues and partners in each market to really understand what their #1 challenge is and stay close to it so that I can orchestrate my organization, my team, to make sure that we can respond to that. And we're not there to say yes to everything. We're there to actually think with them and also think about how we're going to go about and approaching those challenges and advising them as well, right? So for us to be able to do that, we really need to get to the bottom of what the challenge points are for clients. Right. And sometimes, I need to spend more time. I need to go out there and do it. And when I feel like I'm not there, I'm up at night thinking, okay, I got to go there. I got to fly to India. But really, bottom line is that. And making sure also that do I have the right talents to lead the client's businesses and to be Essence leaders. Extremely hard to find talents for, as many of you know, in advertising and media space. It's getting more complex, and media agency is not ending and starting and ending just in media. You need to think about go-to-market strategy with the clients, product positioning with the clients, but also talk about analytics measurement, data strategy with clients. One person cannot do that, obviously, and you need to have the right experts. So as I grow my agency, I'm constantly looking for the best talent in the markets. And Grace and I were talking, you were there at lunch too. Right. It's so hard. Nobody ticks all the boxes, and that's the reality, but what kind of talents do you hire and invest so that you can train up those people? Constantly people, training, talent, leadership is on my mind. People, talent, training. Got it. Grace, for you?
For us, it's about staying close to the consumer. So that's something that keeps us up at night is, are we close enough to the consumer? Do we truly understand their needs, their wants, their challenges? So that's sort of like key amongst everything that, it's our approach, basically. When we do marketing, when we buy media, how close can we get to the consumer? And the second piece definitely resonates, which is talent, right? I think there is a good senior bench at Google, but how do we continue to groom the second generation? How do we continue to groom a second generation, frankly, of locals, right? We're an international company. We are an American company. So we are indexed in terms of an American influence, right? But for us to be successful and for us to be close to consumers, we need to have that localness,
right?
To frankly bring to life what we're offering, and also to connect one-on-one to be relevant to the marketplace that we're at. So those are like sort of the two core things.
Got it. Superb. So we've got like almost 3 minutes left. I do want to open up the floor. Yes. If you could just introduce yourself and quickly, and then ask the question.
Right, good panel, guys. And a tough subject. I think it's very difficult for any of us to conceive what the world will look like 13 years from now.
Yeah, we didn't have a crystal ball to gaze into, right?
No crystal balls, indeed. Scott from Lewis Communications, incidentally. I read a report released earlier this year by the Institute for the Future, such a thing exists, produced in association with Dell. And the report explored the impact of technology on the world of work, and specifically AI and machine learning. Now, one of the key headline findings was that 80% of jobs in the year 2030 do not exist today. 80% of roles. staggering statistic. My question is this: do you think, therefore, that there will be a greater application or transference of value to creative endeavours? You know, the uniquely human capacity to innovate, to create, to be artistic. Grace, you talked about the importance of art in what many of us do. Do you think that will become increasingly valued in the future as things like AI and machine learning begin to play a greater role in our lives?
I definitely think so. And the one industry that really pops to me is the travel industry, where they have sort of done the big swinging, right? Travel agencies that, you know, if you go to a travel agent, was the only way for you to book airlines, hotels, whatever. And when you know, the Travelocity, the Expedias, and Agodas that came up. And it's kind of swung kind of back to, yes, I can book all the basics, but how do I have an immersive experience? I can't really buy an immersive experience if I'm not talking to an agent that specializes in that market, right? And so that's when the personalization, the human touch really comes back. And, you know, I think we shouldn't forget in this room that we are all flesh and blood. And ultimately, that's what we want to connect with. The technology in between is just a means to an end. And we definitely have to change our skill set, right? What skills that you have today may not be relevant for what you have for tomorrow. But if you're driven by your passion, instead of checking a box and saying, oh, this is just my job, you can find those things. And I know of people who have, who have changed their lives, their work, by latching onto that, by providing these immersive human experiences, and made, you know, a business out of it. Shelley Palmer, he's a pretty well-known person, and he does these industry talks in the US, and every Las Vegas CES, he does these huge tours that he takes people, and they pay a lot of money to join his tour to walk the floors. I mean, how ironic is this, right? You're in CES, it's all technology, and what do you rely on? A human, and you're paying a ton of money for his expertise to walk you through the floor. And I think that is the evolution that we have to make. All too often, I think when we look at it, we're like, oh, I can't be a machine. But nobody's asking you to be a machine. What we're asking for is a differentiation to a machine, which we can absolutely do because we develop these things, right? So education has to change. Government has to lean in. We all have to think about it differently. I think that's, you know, I think that report is absolutely right. I mean, we're seeing it today.
Cool.
Oh, we're out of time.
Out
Sorry.
of time, I'm sorry, guys. It was a fantastic session. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank the panelists.